fed. So today we have a choice between purifying our souls and purifying our blood. For those who are interested in that, please, you can head over to the Musalla. Today we're going to be talking, inshallah, a little bit more about hunger and how it's representative of the two shahwa, right? So we have talked about that there are two desires that we have very innately. One of those desires, involves the stomach. The other one involves the lust. And he will get into that, inshallah, and we will definitely touch on it. The reason he spent so much time on hunger is because it is something that is very tangible. It is something that is very manageable. It is something that setting up strategies for it is very easy, and those similar strategies can be applied to us. So, inshallah, and not just that, it's very easy to fall into greed when it comes to issues of hunger. Right? It's really easy to fall into that. It's really easy to fall into excess versus lust. It does happen, but you won't find that a majority of people suffer from it. Right? There's always going to be a minority of people that suffer from it, versus falling into the lust of hunger. Right? Falling into that greed. You'll find many of us fall into it very easily. So this is why he spends so much time on that. So he basically says that some of the ideas that he presented and he kind of built up to in the previous chapters can lead to this sense of extremism, right? Like we felt like it was really extreme the way he was talking about hunger, the way he was talking about starvation. And he's basically, he feels that it's possible that the reader up until this point would feel that this extremism is required. And he's like, okay, well, what does the Sharia say about it? What does the Sharia say in general about extremism? It's forbidden. Forget discouraged.
It's criticized.
Right, it's criticized as something that is not only discouraged, it's something that is strictly forbidden. So what does he say? He says, okay, well, we have to go back to the Sharia and actually look at what it is that the Sharia is telling us. Sharia is not telling us to fall into extremism, it's telling us to find balance. Right? That is the entire purpose here. The entire purpose isn't to become extreme in our habits. The entire purpose isn't to go extreme in countering these things and dealing with these things. The purpose, the end goal, again, is to find balance. And in order to find balance, does it require extreme measures? Sometimes, yes, absolutely. But it's not meant to be fundamental, like a fundamental issue or a fundamental goal. Right? The goal is never extremism. Right? The goal is never extremism at all. It's never the goal. The goal is always going to be balance and finding that balance and seeking that balance. So he uses the hadith of the three individuals who came to him, to the Prophet ﷺ. So the three individuals that came to him, one of them said that I'm going to continuously fast. One of them said I'm going to marry. One of them said I'm going to stay up all night and pray. And how did the Prophet ﷺ respond to them? He said, by Allah. He said, Wallahi, I am more submissive to Allah than you. And we know this, right? This is an individual who had a conversation with Allah. This is an individual who experienced paradise, got to meet previous messengers, had conversation directly with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is it possible that anybody would have more taqwa or be more submissive than him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? It is completely impossible. It is out of logic, out of reason, that anybody would reach even close to his level, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he said, even saying that and knowing that, I fast and I break my fast. Meaning what? I fast?
Not consistent.
Not consistent, right? I fast sometimes, and sometimes there are days that go by where I don't fast. He says that there are times where I sleep and times that I pray. And sometimes I pray the whole night, sometimes I pray a very small part of it. He said, and I also marry. فَمَنْ رَغِبَ عَنْ سُنَّتِي لَيْسَ مِنِّي. And so whoever leaves off, whoever abandons my sunnah, whoever abandons my tradition, then he is not from me, meaning that he's not following the sunnah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Again, reinforcing that idea that extremism is not something that is ever condoned, it's not something that's ever praised, it's always something that is going to be discouraged. And finding that balance is something that is fundamental. Right? This is what is the purpose, this is what's the goal. And even a lot of the times, the things that Ghazāli talks about, it's always meant to be in a medicinal way. Right? It's meant to be as a treatment. It's meant to be as a response. It's not meant to be the norm. So he says that distraction can happen in a couple of ways. Right? A distracted by the heavy stomach. Right? That's one way for an individual to become distracted. And another way, it can be distracted by the pangs of hunger. What is he talking about here? Why does he mention these two things in light of what we have talked about previously?
The two extremes.
Right? These are the two extremes. Right? If I'm going to either be distracted by eating too much, or I'm going to be distracted by eating too little, right? And both of these are going to take away from what it is that I'm seeking. And I'm seeking, again, the idea is that I'm seeking balance, right? I'm trying to be balanced in that. Is it possible that there are moments or there are times where I have a heavy stomach?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are times that I will have pangs of hunger, right? Especially when I'm in that mode where I'm trying to train myself, or I'm trying to bring myself back, or I'm trying to reset that gauge like we always talk about. So over here, he brings the example of this ring of fire. He said basically, this ring of fire is all desires. Right, this ring of fire is all desires. Sorry, like I'm not like super artistic. I try my best. But it's fire, I promise. and he likens this fire to like ants that are getting too close. So he said, and you guys are really like this. Here it comes. How's my ant? Ant's pretty show. It's an ant, man. So this ant, what's wrong with the ant?
It's scared.
Right, not just it's. I mean, it's too close. So it's too close to the edge. Right, it's too close to the edge. This one's even closer to that edge. This one is moving a little bit toward moderation, and this one is actually in the center. And he's saying that this is who we should be. So moderation is actually trying to escape the fire, which represents extremism. He said all of this are different desires, all of these are different types of extremism, and the best way to avoid extremism, what is the furthest point from them? It's the balance point. This is what it is. Versus, it's very easy to sway, right, in any direction. And he's saying the best way to bring back to center is actually coming back to center. And Islam has always been, always spoken about being a religion in moderation, following Sirat al-Mustaqim, right, following the middle way, being just, being upright, in being centered. This is something that's really important, whether it be in our reactions, whether it be in our dealings, whether it be in our worship, whether it be in our consumption, whether it be in how we spend. We will find consistently throughout the Quran and Sunnah this push, this drive to come to the middle. And the reason that drive is there is because it keeps us away from either extremes, right? It keeps us away from recklessness and being overly cautious, right? And giving talks every day about the vaccine, right? Or, from not taking it at all, and kind of understanding and doing our own risk assessments. Like this is something, agency is something that is very much promoted in our religion. Right? Having that personal agency, having that personal understanding, having those personal freedoms. This is something that should ever be taken away from an individual. And this is something that many of us forget many times, that freedom is not a right. Freedom is not a right. Freedom is something that will always have to be fought for. Freedom is not free. Right, freedom is not free. That's a good one. I'll take that one. No more ends. So, he uses the verse, وَكُلُوا وَاشْرَبُوا وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا. Right, and this is, again, a theme that we find yet again and again, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us to eat and drink, but don't be extravagant. What are some benefits we can take from this verse? He's not telling us to do what?
Be extravagant?
Now, He's telling us not to be extravagant, and He's telling us something else.
To eat and drink.
To eat and drink. And don't be extravagant and don't starve yourself either. Right? These are the two extremes that are mentioned here, because we're ordered to do this and we're ordered to stay away from this. And because we're ordered to consume, it keeps us away from that starvation. And we're also ordered to kind of forbid ourselves and to hold ourselves back and to keep those reins. So seeking that equilibrium, again, a theme we will find again and again throughout the Quran, throughout the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he mentioned something that I thought was really nice too. He said taming the soul is similar to taming a beast. What does he mean by that?
It's hard work.
Right, it's hard. And not just that. Not only is it hard, but you have to what?
You have to fight.
Right, you have to keep fighting. Right? And it requires, am I going to tame a beast in one go? No. Right, it takes time. It takes time, it takes effort. But what is the sweetness that comes after taming the beast?
The pleasure of riding it.
Right, the pleasure of riding it. And what else?
Conquest?
Right, conquest and control. Because now the beast was taking me for a ride before, right? But now what am I doing with the beast? I control it, right? And I am using it as a means. And look at how, look how beautiful an example Ghazāli uses to talk about how we tame our nafs and how we control our nafs. That there's a difference between initially, when you have this wild, uncontrolled, just constantly following its desires everywhere it goes, versus actually using it as a means to attain paradise. something that was once the controller is now the controller. So I thought it was really nice. So he talks about levels of achievement and how everybody is going to be at different levels of achievement, right? There's different levels that we're all going to get to. One of those ways, so he says here that the Shaykh may command his aspirants to do things which he himself does not perform. Why? So if your Shaykh gave you something to recite every day, or he put you on a diet, or he tells you to exercise, or he tells you to perform certain sunnah, but when you look at him and his lifestyle, you don't find him doing those things. Why? Why do you think that is?
Means are different. I mean, if a physician
maybe it's like his medicine, like what he.
Right? So his idea is like a doctor, right? He's going to prescribe a prescription. And is it necessary that he suffers from the same illness?
Yes.
What were you going to say?
Similar, meaning
Okay.
we visit the physician, we get prescribed, it doesn't mean the physician still must take this as well.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Just because the medicine is being prescribed, it doesn't mean that medicine is applicable to everyone, including the physician himself. But can this lead to problems?
It also be possible that the Shaykh has already gone through those levels
Absolutely.
initially and has kind of graduated from that.
Yeah, because even if we look at the awrad, right? So you'll find amongst the different tariqas, what do they usually do? They'll have like an initiating with, right? They'll have an initiating liturgy that or litany that you have to read, right? They'll be like, okay, you have to read this many times, and then after a few months, what do they do? Right? They'll add to it. They'll give you something else, and then after like a year, they'll add to it, give it to you. Like as long as you're within the fraternity, right? As long as you're within the Sufi order, they'll keep adding on to that, right? And what is the purpose behind adding those things? Like your chakras get unlocked, right? Right? your levels get unlocked. Right? So it can become like a quite like kind of like arbitrary and like a bit esoteric and stuff like that. But initially that is what the idea was, right? Because basically what the Shaykh was doing, he was prescribing these things to individuals, and these prescriptions, what happened?
They help them.
They might have helped that person, for sure. And then what happens after that? When a person sees that this helps, what do? They take that prescription and they pass it down. Right? So it's like me coming to you and we do this a lot with each other, right? It's like I have a headache. Hey, dude, try aspirin. Try Tylenol. Or try, hey, no, man. Like these guys, they don't know what they're talking about. Everybody uses aspirin and Tylenol. You should really use Nexium, right? So the thing is, like, you have different people with different experiences, and because of those experiences, what happens is they actually started writing down some of these things. And when they started writing down some of these traditions, and this is where the silsila comes from, right? So you'll find a chain, you'll find an isnad with all of these different tariqas, and part of that is because each one prescribed these particular things at a particular time to a particular person. Does it mean that it'll work for me? No, but it was a tried and true method for either an individual or a certain group of individuals, or for the Shaykh himself. He's like, I went through these stages, and this helped me at this point in my life, this helped me at this point in my life, and this helped me at this point in my life. I think we take it a little bit too prescriptive nowadays, and there is definitely an element of cultism that's there. And I see that with a lot of the different tariqas. Is that meant to be that? No, because we had said it initially, and very much, and it's something I want to reinforce. The idea of the relationship between the Shaykh and the Murid is very much like a mentor and a mentee. Right? He's supposed to guide him. He's supposed to give him a shot. He's supposed to give him tarbiyah. He's supposed to help, give him those spiritual upliftments every time he needs that. He's supposed to help him make his decisions. But it's very much become like, this type of cultish thing where you just blindly listen to whatever it is. And are there people who've taken advantage of the system? Yeah, absolutely. But are there people who benefited from it? Yeah, for sure. And everybody needs something different, to empower them. And everybody needs something different to help them with their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So refraining from hunger, he talks about this, saying that what happens, and he's talking about now the Shaykh. He's saying that refraining from hunger, a few things can happen with this person. He's actually truthful in what it is that he is doing. He's being truthful to himself, and he's being truthful to others. And he says, sometimes, and there are people who delude themselves, thinking that this is their path to piety. How do we determine if I'm being truthful or I'm deluding myself? got real roasted. Because some of us, sometimes we have that false sense of hiding, right? Where we feel like, oh, you know, I'm praying my sunnah, but how do I know it's real and how do I know it's not? What is my measuring stick? How do I determine that?
Maybe your sincerity?
Right, it's my sincerity. A lot of this goes back to a healthy skepticism of what it is and why it is that I'm doing certain actions I'm supposed to. So I think that's definitely important, you know, to help us determine how honest am I being with myself. Right? This is always going to come back. This is something that's a theme that we're going to see time and again. How honest am I really being with myself? Because if I'm refraining from hunger just because like I see other people doing it or somebody's telling me, and it's not really helping me, but it's to appease the group. Right? This is usually the reason that many of us do a lot of things, because of social reinforcement. Right? Social reinforcement is like really powerful. It really is. There are a lot of the reasons, a lot of decisions we make is because we don't want to upset our peers. So, and I'm just using that as one example, right? There could be a number of reasons that we do things. But this is the type of conclusion. Right? I'm not actually doing it. I'm fasting because everybody else is fasting. I'm not doing it as my personal needs in ways that other people must. So the diagnostic lifestyle, right? This is something that we had spoken about in this gauge. It's not the first time you guys are seeing it. But basically what Ghazāli presents here, he doesn't use this terminology, but it is something that it is very common, that is always going to be between culpables. It's always going to be between withholding and bestowing. What do these two things mean? What do you guys answer? What do you guys take away from that?
Is it like withholding your desires?
So this is actually talking about a lot of relationship with us. Does that help? In what way? And how does that affect my lifestyle?
You withhold too much, then you'll be hungry. Bestows too much, you'll be too full.
Okay, so that's basically Allah giving us, right? So do we believe that Allah will ever get to this point?
Not just
Or Allah will get to this point?
Oh, Allah is not always going to bestow and go forth.
Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he say? What ayah did we know that you can do Allah? Allah does not burden the soul more than it can bear, meaning that he does not burden it by giving it too much, and he does not burden it by giving it too little. And if we understand that things remain between this gauge, how should I adjust my lifestyle accordingly? So when I'm at this point here, Allah is, if I'm here, and how do I determine if I'm here, or how do I determine if I'm here? Right? These are a few questions I think it's important for us to answer.
I feel like you have to know.
How do you feel? Right? And we've all been at that point. We feel it. We know that Allah is giving us. And we know that we're doing well. And we know that we're succeeding. You know, like those days where everything is just, you know what I mean? Like you're just hitting everything. And it's that time that you know that Allah He's giving. How do I adjust my lifestyle accordingly? You give? Huh? You give? Okay? Like this one, right? I actually start giving too. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he say about the person who gives? Well, in shakartum, azidannakum. It says, when you are thankful, I am going to give and increase. That's one way. Absolutely. That's a way of showing thanks. What else can I do to adjust? Remember, how else do I adjust? And is the gauge always going to stay here? No. The gauge is going to move here. I guarantee. I'm telling you guys right now. Like, spoiler alert. It will get here. It will get here. And sometimes it'll come back here. Sometimes it'll go here. Sometimes it'll be here. Right? That's up to Allah. He decides. But my question is when I'm here, how do I prepare for this? And when I'm here, how do I prepare for this?
Be thankful.
Okay, being thankful. So at this point, I would show thanks, right? At this point, what do I show?
Patience.
I show patience. I show forbearance. giving. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. What else? Ken?
Bedtimes or
Well,
well, maybe experience
okay, so
not material, not the same material, but internal spiritual, being ready that first of all realize that everything belongs to Allah, and everything can be taken away quickly.
so where am I going to realize, or where am I going to be able, or where is it going to be easier for me to practice closer? Here. Like over here, do I have a choice?
No, so, yeah.
I don't have much of a choice. I already don't have anything.
I didn't say, I
Yeah.
understood what you want, but I said, in bedtime, there's
Yes.
no zuhud in full sense.
Right, it's because I can't practice it,
Yeah.
right? There's no challenge here. So how do I show forbearance? How do I show patience? And over here, how do I show thanks? Right, one way you guys said was to give. I agree with that. But there has to be more ways. All of us have experienced both of these things. And sometimes it can be materially, sometimes it can be spiritually, sometimes it can be physically, sometimes it can be mentally, right? It doesn't have to be just with money. So how do we utilize those times? Yeah, when I'm feeling good, how do I utilize that? When I'm feeling down, how do I utilize that? What do I do? Yes.
Use it in service of Allah.
Okay.
And be consistent regardless of whether which side is scaling or on.
Sure. Like being consistent. But this can present a problem in some situations, right? You know, for example, if I'm spiritually depressed, am I going to pray as fully as I did when I was here?
You may not get out of it what you're putting into it, but you got to put into it still.
Okay, so I think consistency, not necessarily in the action itself, but consistency in effort,
Intention.
right? I should try. I should always make an effort at any point, regardless of what the scale is. Sometimes the effort is going to be less, sometimes it's going to be more. I like that. What else? How do I show forbearance? How do I show self?
Being content.
Okay, showing contentment. What does that mean? What does it mean to be content?
To be pleased with what Allah has given you.
Okay, how do I show that I'm pleased with what Allah has given me?
So first of all, control the speech.
Okay.
And
Now we're
even if there are thoughts, you have to control what's on your tongue.
and we had spoken about this before. This control, this mu'amalat, we had directed it, or this dealings, we've connected it directly with that. It's a taqwa. This is where my taqwa should shine in how I deal with others, right? And we're going to see it in both places. But over here, there's going to be more reactions that I'm going to give, right? I'm going to be, right? I'm going to, I'm going to want to jump on everyone. So I need to show, this is how I show self. This is how I show forbearance. This is how when I control my actions here, this is the best way of being thankful and being content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed me with, what He has given to me. This is what is beautiful about that, because it's so tangible. I know how to be good with people. I know how to be nice to people. I know how to be kind to people. I know how to smile at them even when I'm feeling upset.
Does that mean you're content? From inside?
How can I be content? That's just one aspect, right? When we talk about dealings, that's just one aspect. How do I show, how am I content? You guys got lectures to do. Oh, we're still on.
Doing things in Allah's hands in some way. So like,
Okay, I know things are in Allah's hands. I think all of us know at some level or another, but how do I show that I'm content?
Accept that it's Allah's habit.
Show me, right? That I accept. There's a difference between knowing and accepting. I accept that this is what Allah has written for me. And what does that acceptance entail? I keep making these questions harder. What does that acceptance entail? Okay, being happy. I think this is
Never what you specifically given and
Okay.
not expecting.
okay. Expectations. Ahsan, right? That's really good. Keeping my expectations
In fact,
in check. Because when my expectations are broken, what happens? My spirit also breaks. So I think controlling expectations is important. Happiness is directly related to those expectations. Who controls my happiness?
you.
I do. أنا أملك سعادتي. I own my own happiness. Nobody else can make me happy. It's important. Only I can make me happy. And if I keep looking for others to make me happy, you know what's going to happen?
Yeah, become depressed.
I will be disappointed and I will become depressed. Because happiness is something that's internal. It's never going to be external. Even if I look for things to purchase, those things, they will bring me moments of happiness. But the moment that I get something, what's going to happen?
No.
It's fleeting, and I'm going to look for the next target, right? And I just keep looking for the stimuli. I keep looking for the stimuli, and that stimuli, it just leads down the path of greed. Because I'm just going to keep wanting more and more and more and more. Yes?
It's like smoking.
Mm-hmm.
You get addicted to smoking. And
Yeah,
you have
it's the same thing, right? I get that dopamine rush every time I get that thing. But absolutely, it's an evil addiction. So, how do I? So defining expectations, that's something that's really important. Where should I place my expectations?
Love.
Huh?
Love. Well, expectations of Allah, but maybe
Ah.
not of other people.
So where should my expectations? So if this is with Allah and this is with people, where do you guys think with Allah should be?
You should always expect the best from Allah.
Should I expect less?
No, the best. The best.
I should expect the best from them. From the people. Not much. Good. And this, ya ikhwan, is the recipe to happiness. Because everything that I hope from Allah, I guarantee, if I'm asking for Him and from Him sincerely, I will get. And everything I ask from the people, they will always
Disappointing.
disappoint. إلا من رحم. Sometimes they fulfill. We keep our expectations from the people short. The Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you is the one whose best is family. And I am the best to my family. So, what kind of expectations did he have from his wives? There are narrations, which we're all familiar with, where the Prophet ﷺ was praying Qiyam, and what was Aisha doing? She was asleep. The Prophet ﷺ asked Barira, he said, tell me something bad about Aisha. He was like, she said to him ﷺ, that while she's kneading bread, she falls asleep.
The girl comes and eats it.
And the mice would come and take from her. Like she'd be so asleep that she wouldn't even realize that the mice were coming and taking from her. And do we have any narrations where he ﷺ was scolding her over any of these things?
No.
It's important to make sure that we keep a lot of these expectations in perspective. And if we want something, what should we do? If I want something from my wife, or I want something from my friend, or I want something from my child, or I want something from my parents, what do?
Ask.
I have to ask for it. What prevents us from asking? I'm sorry?
Assume that they know.
What word have we been throwing around a lot? Huh?
I thought you knew.
Expectations. Right? The reason we don't ask is because of our personal expectations. They should understand. They should know. Why did they get it? And the only thing that's pushing that question is our nafs. So acceptance is a huge part of understanding how to deal with this portfolio. Because if I accept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put me in this situation, and this is the reality, and I have to deal with what is at hand, it's actually very empowering. Because I know that either I'm at my limit or I'm close to my limit. There are many times where we feel our spirit is about to break. There are many times where we feel like we're tired. But it is at that moment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring victory. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He follows the same verse. يعني لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. ها؟ ربنا لا تؤاخذنا. No, this is a different ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He talks about فَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And whoever truly relies on Allah. And what does reliance mean? That now I trust Allah. I have done everything that I could do, but now what? Now I leave it up to Allah. And what does Allah say? The moment that I do that, the moment I submit, and the moment I give everything to Allah, not give up, right? There's a big difference. But the moment I give everything to Allah, and I say I have done everything possible, Allah, how does He follow the verse? وَيَرْزُقُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And He provides for him in ways that he cannot even imagine. That is Allah's blessing. That is Allah's power. That is Allah's ability. In rizq, it doesn't have to be in a financial sense. It can be spiritually, it can be physically, it can be mentally. Any questions on this?
Do you keep, when you do leave everything, you didn't say give up, but do you keep doing what you were doing, or
Yes.
do you?
That is part of what
That took all your efforts, all your time.
Yeah. Because I remember, subhanAllah, I had
withdraw a little bit, you know.
No, you shouldn't withdraw. No. You have to keep making that effort. That's a sign of showing forbearance. That's a sign of something. That I need to keep working. I need to get in that mindset. I just need to keep grinding. And once I get into that mindset, I just need to keep working and Allah will make a way, then that's when Allah's victory will come. We shouldn't just stop, be like, I did enough. No, like I said, there's a difference between giving in to Allah and giving up. Giving in to Allah means keep doing what I'm doing and trust Allah to make a way. And Allah will make a way. Versus giving up means just walking away from it. That's what true trust is. That's what tawakkul is. So over here, he brings a statement from Ma'ruf al-Karafi where he says that when He gives me food, I eat. When He gives me hunger, I endure patience. And I think it's a beautiful example. It's a beautiful example of what we spoke about before. This is the time of bust. And this is the time of up. Right? This is the time of bestowing, and this is the time of withholding. And look how he says that he responds appropriately. So the role of the sheikh is to continuously push his students so that they do not fall short. So sometimes, like we had talked about before, some of the prescriptions come across as very harsh, some of them come across very extreme, but the idea is for the sheikh to be behind his student and to encourage him and to keep pushing him. Right? How many of us had those teachers or had that gym coach, right? Or how many of us have had that fitness trainer where it's just standing over their head and you just keep yelling and keep telling him to push. But the person himself, what does he feel? He feels pain, and not just that, he feels like, I'm done. I can't do anymore. He's like, one more, right? We just constantly hear that. Or like sometimes our parents will keep pushing us. Sometimes our teachers will keep pushing us. Sometimes there are different relationships and friends that we have who will keep pushing us. And that is something that's normal, that's something that's healthy, that's something that we should all do for each other. This is part of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy anil Munkar. This is part of commanding the good and forbidding the evil, and encouraging and I want to say enabling is a bad word, but I want to say encourage and uplifting one another. We should all look to empower one another, right? That's part of being a good Muslim. That's part of a brotherhood. That's part of community. That we are all here to uplift one another. We're not here to hold each other and pull each other down. The next chapter, Ghazāli talks about complete renunciation. So he said that there are many mashayikh, or many of the shuyukh, they will completely renunciate, they'll completely stay away from food and drink. And he said some of these individuals, they suffer from one of two things. They'll publicly stay away from certain foods, and then privately, it's concealed. So he said this is an honesty issue, right? Their honesty needs to be called into account, right? This is a big problem. He said there are some people who do it out of showing off, meaning that they don't privately consume, but they just do it so that the people will call them a zahid, so that the people will call them pious. And these individuals, again, he says it's also an honesty issue. Which one of the two do you feel is worse?
Showing off.
The showing off, for sure. The showing off is for sure. And the terms he uses for these two are shirk khafi, because he's still practicing privately, and niyah. And what does Allah say about the actions that follow this path?
They won't get accepted.
They won't be accepted. That these actions are rejected. So the person who is renunciating, all he's not doing is eating and drinking. Or all he's doing is just, praying or doing all of these things. In both of these, subhanAllah, the masdar or the source of the problem is the same. It's a lack of honesty. And we had talked about before, right? How do I determine why I'm doing certain things? By being honest with myself.
What if you're like in a situation where, you're doing these things out of sincerity, you would do them, but
Yeah.
like you're doing it to teach people, right? Like
Sure.
for your family, right? You're setting an example. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do you come to terms with that when you're like,
Sure. No, that's an excellent question. What do I do when my intention changes? Right? What do you guys think?
We should still, even if, so I know this moment, even if we are concerned about if my intention is pure or not, we should still go on and do that deed.
Okay.
Even if we feel as if we are showing it off,
Okay.
we should still go on and do it, because if we abandon it, it would be that shirk khafi.
So the concern in and of itself, me being concerned about my deed, what is that a sign of?
But I'm concerned about others.
Sincere. Not concerned about others. Me being concerned about myself. Am I really doing this for Allah? That concern in and of itself is sincerity. I don't doubt that. And not just that. What is the thing with sincerity? Like once I start a sincerity train, like the sincerity train just keeps going up, I have to constantly renew it. Right? I have to constantly challenge myself. I have to constantly challenge my problems. I have to constantly challenge what it is and how am I approaching these different deeds. And it is through that challenging that I'm going to grow, that I will actually learn to have conversation with myself. Right? A lot of this has to do with self-discovery. A lot of it. A lot of these things, like, why am I actually, Like, why am I actually doing these things? Do I enjoy when people talk about me doing this or doing X, doing Y, doing Z? What should I do at that point when I enjoy people talking about me doing something? I have to renew my intention, but a good start would be to what?
Doing it private.
Doing it private. Or, if it's a public action, I can only do it in public. Stop doing it. Well, Hajj is a little bit different. It's a little bit more challenging. Hajj is meant to be a public act, right? But in Hajj, like a public act like Hajj. I think Hajj every year. Allah has given me the opportunity because I'm a group leader. I have to go every year.
But not everybody, I'm going to have
Right? Make sure that I don't tell anyone. If people ask, obviously I'm not going to lie to them. Be like, no, it's like, bro, we saw you in Arafah. So you don't want to lie. That's one thing for sure. If people ask, be honest with them. What is something else I can do?
Doing private more. Even if someone said,
Right.
it's classical Imam,
Sure.
I don't expect much from our public deeds,
Yeah.
but if they accept, alhamdulillah, because I'm hoping for my private deeds.
Sure. So, and being excluding yourself as much as possible. Using the time to go away. If all I have to do during Hajj is just not be with my group, right? Because when I'm not with my group, who knows me? No. Like unless I'm a Muslim, right? But in general, like nobody will know me, right? If all I have to do is literally just go like 110 over, and no one will have any idea who I am. So I can still utilize those chances. I can still utilize those opportunities.
So, in this situation, it's like you're fulfilling a duty, right? And maybe there's other people who be encouraged and they saw you doing it,
Sure.
right? For Hajj,
Yeah.
for fasting, for
Sure.
praying.
comes to my actions, first and foremost, who is the priority?
Well, me.
Me.
Right.
And I am the priority even when it comes to the point of will the people miss out on something? Yeah. Because it's more important for me to show my sincerity, to be sincere, than it is for me to completely do it for another reason and completely destroy that action. And essentially, how much blessing is there going to be if I'm teaching something without the sincerity behind it? Like we create a legacy with sincerity. We don't create a legacy with actions.
So better to go pray by myself than to say, hey guys, we should go do the
No, that's fine.
Is that
It's saying like, or praying in congregation. Like, okay, hey, let's pray in congregation and don't leave. Right? I mean, there's different strategies in dealing with all of these different things. Or like, and there's different ways of talking about it. Or, if you know that there's somebody who's loud in the group, you're like, hey, let's pray. You're like, yeah, man, we're praying. Hey guys, right? You know what I mean? It's understanding myself, understanding my problem. But again, a lot of it has to do with that internal discussion. And then figuring out strategies on how to deal with it. It's not challenging. Allah has made a number of pathways. You were going to say something?
Yeah, I remember that hadith of the Prophet about giving charity first.
Yes.
So to encourage others,
Yeah.
and everybody else would give after you would count as your charity as well.
You get the reward.
It's an example of encouraging others.
No,
As long as you know
You should
why
say-
you are doing
sure.
it, as long as you know it, for the sake of Allah, to encourage others.
And it's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle. It's not something, I'm not saying it's easy, but, do you have to be the first to give every time? I don't. Like, maybe sometimes it might be a good idea for me to check my intention, be like, okay, what if I'm the second one? Or what if I'm the silent donor? Right? Or if I really want to teach people, send a text message, be like, hey, I'm giving $30,000. Please don't show me. Right? That's a real test. Because you taught the lesson. What was it? The lesson was you giving the money, or was the lesson the money being given? Right? That's the lesson that's there. And if I can find different ways to achieve that lesson, it's important for me to try to utilize that. The highest form of renunciation is to renounce renunciation itself. But by outwardly appearing to do the opposite. Like what? Walking into a really hi-fi restaurant, and everybody sees you walking. And I go in and I drink a glass of lemon water, hang out for a little while, play with my phone, and I leave. What impression have I given? I don't want to give the impression that I'm rich, for sure. Or if people don't know that, they're like, okay, well, we don't know. Dang, we didn't know the shit was baller like that, right? That's one thing. The second thing can be like, man, he's got some really bougie taste. Well, what have I done? Right? I just went for lemon water. That was my intent. I was like, would you like anything, sir? Yeah, can I get some ice water? Anything else? Yeah, can I get a slice of lemon? You got no doggy bag for my ice water, right? So there are things that we definitely can do. There's no doubt about that. And this is what he's talking about here, right? To actually show the opposite. And why are we showing the opposite? To protect ourselves from?
For praises.
For praise. Right? You're actually trying to protect, or we're trying to actually protect ourselves from praise. Because we don't want to fall into the enemy. We don't want to fall into shirk.
You're saying don't go to the restaurant, or go to the restaurant and make sure everybody sees what you're ordering?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, if they see what you're ordering, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
It's like, what is he doing? It's crazy, right? Like, why would you go get lemon water? Right? You just get, you know what I mean?
I'm showing you the right way to do this.
Right, I'm showing you the right way. It's like the restaurant goes out of business. So, but like, it's important, to keep these things in mind, that there are certain perceptions that it's good to put out there. Like, another example is, for example, man, the chef, all he does, he just praises, he'll come out right before Imam, he'll praise Father, and then he'll leave. But nobody knows that he praises someone in his office. Outwardly, what do the people see? Right, he just gets some things. I'm not saying I do that. I know people secondly, what appearance has he given? That all he cares about is making the congregational prayer, and he, then he leaves. And he gets back to work. Or maybe he prays when nobody else is around. Right? There's so many things that can be done, and there's so many impressions that can be given. And the reason we utilize those impressions is not because we want to lie to people or to deceive them. It's because we want to protect our attention.
There's a kind of a story, a legend. A man goes, buys alcohol, goes to that's something else, and goes to a nightclub with the prostitutes, and everybody sees it. We thought he's a righteous man, and the wife comes in. Why would you do this?
Yeah.
I buy alcohol to destroy it. I go to in order to pay the prostitutes so that at least for this hour she is. Yeah, and I give dollar to her, just like that.
Yeah. It's a bit extreme. Hey, work for him.
It's also heard that not he's giving dollar to the nightclub, but the nightclub gave dollar to him.
Okay. Oh.
He's at the front of fitna. He can follow it.
Allah protect. Allah protect.
Did she believe that? Did she believe that? The wife? I wonder.
That's a good. I believe it's just a legend, just an exemplary of how you could use it.
If something is put before you in the nature of a desire that you have renounced, okay? For example, if you really enjoy steak and mashed potatoes and gravy, for example, if that's something you really enjoy and is presented to you, how do you think we should deal with it? Because I renounced this specifically. Remember we had spoken about before that different scholars renounce different specific things. So this specific meal is something that I am clearly inclined toward. What should I do with it?
Hold yourself, don't eat it right away, or
Okay, so I should reserve myself. Ghazāli mentioned he said to stay a little bit. Cut a piece of steak and use a spoon of the mashed potatoes and gravy. Why do you think he says that?
To excite your senses, and I believe he would say, hold yourself at this point. Don't take any more.
Okay. We'll continue. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So he says you partake of it just take a little bit. And the reason he mentions that, he says, because you don't want to give your soul all of this. And essentially, you're still what? You're still renouncing. You're still denying your nafs. Because what does your nafs want? Eat all of it. It wants all of it, right? Your nafs wants all of it. And sometimes you keep convincing yourself, it's a little bit more. This, like my nafs, you know what I mean? It didn't get that flavor, it didn't get that taste yet, right? I didn't get the juices. I didn't fully get the juices. So he mentions here, I thought it was really nice, right? I thought it was a really nice way of dealing with this. But for sure, getting a taste of something is very different than actually indulging it. Because what advantage do you get by just tasting it? It fulfills that faculty, right? That faculty of just getting that flavor and getting that taste. What happens is that part gets fulfilled. But the entirety of it doesn't. And you still have, that it still shows restraint. Because one of the themes that we see throughout the hunger discussion is themes of restraint and delayed gratification. And this is something that's really, really important and fundamental to the moment.
I have a question. Let's say, for an example, you take a bite of steak and it's completely like you hate it, right? So then, what should you do then? Like,
Oh, if you hate it, then you can finish it. No, I'm being serious. Because the goal is to get to a point where we're eating for, why are we eating?
For nourishment.
For sustenance, and for nourishment. This food is just a what? It's a vehicle for me to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And me eating it or not eating it is equal. And if I dislike it, it's even better. Because I'm only eating it at that point for what? For sustenance. And if I enjoy it, that's an added bonus, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ, what did he tell us? What is one of his favorite du'as? What is the one that he used to make a lot? رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So that was the end of the chapter. It was just it was a nice quote that he ended it with, and I enjoy it. I thought this would be a nice representation of that. We'll stop here for questions, inshallah. If you have any questions, so we can start with that.
Is the sunnah fast of Dawood better
There we go.
better than the sunnah fast of the Prophet ﷺ, or it's like
Yeah. So the question is the fast of Dawood, which is every other day, better than the fast of the Prophet I think the Prophet said that out of humility. But the best fast is the fast of the Prophet. He is our example. He's our leader, you know. But there's that. Yeah, a lot of scholars that talk about, you know, whose fast was actually better. But wallahu alam, the fast of the Prophet is better.
How about the sunnah? If we add the sunnah, one thing what he commands and another thing what he does himself.
Yeah. So there are some things that he commanded, and there are some things that he himself didn't do. The sunnah after Dhuhr, for example, before he passed away, he would pray them, you know, after Asr, but he would tell us to pray the sunnah during their times. You know, so you do have cases like that. There aren't too many though. You don't have, yeah.
I mean, the verbal explicitly said about the crossing of Dawood.
Yeah, sunnah al-Qawliya. Yeah, I mean, so unfortunately, there is a level that some of the legal theorists, scholars have mentioned. They said the first level are his statements, right? That's the highest.
Yeah.
So if he states something, this is the highest sunnah. There are some statements, if he does them, this sunnah, it would be the next tier, implicit allowings, like if he allowed things to happen from him, that would be the third tier. And I think that in general that applies. But does it mean that actions precede his statements sometimes? Yeah, I think so. And are there other times? But in general, I think that definitely does apply. In a lot of respects. Any other questions?
So in this like steak example, right? You have an inclination.
I'm not the one that likes to.
Lemon water and one bite of steak. No. So we're always gonna have a yearning for something like that.
Sure.
Is the goal to control the yearning, right?
Yeah.
Or to train yourself, because you can train yourself to like not like something, right?
Sure.
What's better?
So the goal is to channel the yearning, right? The goal in all of these has always been to channel the desire. Remember we talked about before, did Ghazāli ever mention removing these desires altogether?
No.
No, he didn't. The focus has always been on how to channel them, how to tame them, how to get those desires to work in our favor and to work in our benefit. And that's what all this is here. Even this desire for this particular food, it's meant to be very representative, right? It's the actual thing is not, you know, if I don't eat steak or whatever, it's not taking away from anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But this is representative of my desires, right? And if I concentrate this will, if I'm able to leave off this desire, this is the goal and this is the purpose behind it. I have now trained myself to channel the desire for this in this way. I can now do analogy on any other desire that happens in my life. And I'm able to channel it in a way where it can actually benefit me.
It's the training itself that you're undergoing.
It's absolutely. Because the end goal is what? Is getting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to love me. And I want to make sure that I have all of the tools that Allah has given me available to me, useful in a way that I can utilize for myself. So that I can use it as a quicker means to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even he likened it to, remember he said it's like crossing the Sirat. Right? It's like crossing the bridge that takes the individuals to paradise. And always staying on that. How quickly we move on that is how quickly we conquer our desires.
So how about the story of Ayyub alayhi salam, Prophet Job, when he was healed and Allah sent him, he saw the golden and he started collecting all of those non-stop, and when Allah said, "Oh, Ayyub, isn't this enough?" And he said, "Well, Allah, how can I, when you are sending me bliss, how can I stop?"
Yeah.
Why don't we? I'm just having a hard time with the steak and this story. why don't we take all just as blessings from Allah? Why don't you enjoy and be thankful?
Yeah, yeah. So no, nobody's saying don't enjoy it, right? But even enjoyment should be done in moderation. And when Allah gives us, even if we get large sums of money, or if we get large, something that we really enjoy, we get an entire cheesesteak that people gift us sometimes. There are things that we really enjoy. Like, does that mean that I should consume all of it? And even Ayyub, being a prophet, being one who has conversation with Allah, what do you think he did with his wealth?
Probably donated it.
Right? If we just look at a pattern, at the lifestyles of the different prophets, they weren't really like extravagant or luxurious. You have a couple examples here and there with Sulaiman and Dawood who are a little bit more luxurious. But in general, like just looking at the lives of the prophets, they're pretty simple people. Right? It's only, like I said, it's only a handful that you see were like really kings or had some kind of kingdom behind them. But most of them are pretty simple. And even Ayyub, after all that he went through, you really think he's going to take that money and like try to build a castle now? No. Right? You can't even imagine that for him. That he would even go through that or do all that. I imagine him investing back in the community, helping others. Just being thankful for what it is that Allah. And based on other verses, we find that being thankful is what actually increases. And if he wants more, maybe his way of showing his thanks. And say, yeah, Allah, now that you're giving me this, I really appreciate it. Because I can appreciate it with full health. And in a lot of respects. Anything else? They're actually 3 more chapters, and the next 2 are pretty short, so we might actually finish this in a couple weeks. Else?
Speaking of hunger, I heard from someone saying fasting, going hungry was something all prophets did. And he didn't mention any specific reference. I understand logical reason,
Sure.
but is there any clear text?
The only thing I can think of that might indicate that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's statement, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ الصِّيَامُ وَكُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. That fasting has been prescribed for you as it was prescribed for those before you, so that you may achieve or maintain, God consciousness or something. So there are indications there. I don't know if we have any clear text that said that they would feel hunger or go hungry. Like I said, for example, like thinking of Dawood and Sulaiman, like why would they need to go hungry? Like like with the Prophet with Noah, for example, Ibrahim, Yusuf, he'd be like, yeah, they're like really sucky times. Like they had like a lot of hardship. So it makes sense that they would. But even the wealthier prophets, it would have to be by choice for them. And I could see that through fasting.
Rasulullah he used to fast consistently, and he forbade. So is the fiqh ruling is makruh or haram?
It's makruh.
Makruh, right?
Yeah. So if doing wisal, continuous fasting, is disliked, but it's not impermissible.
He fasted like non-stop, meaning did not break, right? Not every single word.
Yeah.
That thing he forbade. What if
Yeah.
someone breaks fast at iftar and fast again next
So
day?
you can break fast with your intention, right?
Yeah.
You actually don't need to eat anything. You can just break fast with your intention. Okay. There are a few minutes until the comment, so we'll end here. I'll see you guys next week. If you guys have any questions, just make note of them or share them.